With his heavy, charcoal-stained hands, he pulled the thick, greasy hair away from his eyes and let it hang down his back. Oh, he was dirty, but the work that he enjoyed the most, making bronze. He had been given the magic at his fingertips to create a metal so strong that no one could believe it. When it was polished, it glittered like gold, and it was hard and it was strong. He was a good worker, noble, proud, because he was his own father's son. He was a chieftain's son, and you would have thought that a chieftain would be proud that his own son knew what it was to work hard. But the work that this man had chosen was to be that of a metal worker. His father, the chieftain, had decided that no son of his would stay within their great clan and live there and do such demeaning work. And so he was cast out and thrown away from that place. Now he travelled far over mountains, valleys, vales, plains, and the sea. He had tried not to, even though he was a man's man. He had tried not to, but the sea had got the better of him as he had travelled from Gaul to the land of the Celts. He travelled throughout that land, and he had a great secret. For instead of showing his ways, showing the great bronze axe heads that he had made, and showing them all to each and every one, he would have them hidden about his clothing. When he had been in amongst the darkest hills, he had been met upon the road by a black bear. It was huge and powerful, with claws as long as your finger, and there'd been nothing for it. The two of them had to fight. He respected the way that the bear had fought, for as you can tell, the fact that he was in this place, then he was the victor. But he had not used one of the great sharp bronze axe heads. He had heard of a metal that shone like silver and was nearly as strong as bronze. No, not that he believed it, but the temperature that it was made at was hotter and higher than bronze. And he had used a knife that was made out of iron. No one would show him how to make iron, but he knew well how to make bronze, and it was with this knife that he had killed the bear. It had a bone handle that had once been an antler of a deer, and perhaps the way that it wrapped about his wrist when he had fought with that great black bear. But he had killed the bear, and he had skinned it, and now, on this cold, ice-cold evening, in the middle of this forest in Cambria, he was pleased that he had the bear and its skin wrapped about him. He pulled it closer to him. There was ice and frost upon the ground, and he had made a small fire. He had tasted the meat of that great enemy of his, that black bear, and he felt as if it had filled his own muscles with the strength of the bear, its great animal strength, and he was proud that he had been the victor in such a great battle. For anyone and everyone who would listen to him, he would tell the tale. But this was where he kept the axe heads, not so that he could be seen, but in a bag, a bearskin bag. A bearskin bag with 14 axe heads inside. Each one would feed him for a full season, because he would barter them. he would swap them for food or shelter or the chance to live inside of a village, for he would wander all of the time to find knowledge from different parts of this world, and he had seen more of this world than his father would ever see in 100 lifetimes. But not only that, this chieftain's son, as he was there in the middle of the forest, amongst all of the tall trees, he knew that he kept, inside of the skull of the bear, some coins. Coins that held the likeness of his father. For the Romans had come to that place. They had conquered his father, but his father had given up such a strong fight that the Romans, who respected him, just in the same way that he respected the black bear, they had respected him by putting his face upon coins. And to remind him of home, he would look at the 1, 3, 5 coins that he would hold in his hands, and now, by the flickering light of the small fire in amongst the tall trees in here, Cambria, he was looking at the coins, and he placed them back inside of the skull and wrapped the long arms and the skin around him. Inside of this great bear skin, he would place, in small pockets that were made out of cow hide, he would place the bronze heads in and around. They would lie in rows, 7 in one side and 7 in the other, and there they were. He couldn't really sell them because no one had coins except for him, but he wondered what he was going to do. As the day was starting to darken and the frost was pulling closer to him, from these tall trees he broke off branches with one of the axe heads and was starting to horn and cut with a steel blade, starting to horn and cut handles that would hold the bronze axe heads. Once he'd made a handle for one of them, he used that to help get more of the branches and twigs that he would need to make the fire and to make more axe handles. And perhaps it was the fact that he was so proud of what he'd made, that the axe that he'd made, that he'd used to cut a branch down, was as bright as gold, and it flickered. And those who lived in that place had heard of great monstrous beasts that lived in the other valleys, that lived in amongst the trees. And perhaps it was superstition, perhaps it was curiosity, fear, or anger, or ignorance. As he lay there by the side of his fire, wrapped up in the bear skin, they thought that some great huge monstrous beast had come to this place, and his life was snuffed out like the fire that he lay beside. Years later, the axe heads were found, for his bones had rotted away like his flesh, as had the skin of the great black bear, but the bronze remained. 7 at one side and only 6 at the other. It was as if they'd been buried in the ground, and they were found, and no one knew and no one could explain why two rows of axe heads lay, with 7 and with 6. 13 bronze axe heads lying buried in the soil.